Well, I think they're just so good in all areas. They've always have been, and that's what they just seem to produce. And it's their mentality as well of being able to know they can control a game. They have that belief in themselves. But yeah, I mean, I thought last night I was surprised at how quick the centre halves were, because when you see it in person, it's a little bit like actually she's got some speed because they're up against fast French players, and they dealt with those quite well. The midfield are just so efficient. I mean, McGall actually went off quite early, I thought because she's one of their stronger, better players and certainly more creative players. But yeah, and obviously Cara, the left wide player, Cara Ball, if she comes back or not, it might be quite tight timing for her. Getting over COVID, she'll be a loss for them, I think, as well, and that would be a benefit for England. But then it is Popp, isn't it? It's the ability they get of crossing. They get good in wide areas, good, and get those balls in. And it's not just a hopeful ball in. It's they know where each other are. They've always, again, in my time, they always seem to have that understanding. You thought you would have in there be a good position to defend across, and then they would just put it on literally on a tee to someone to be able to attack it, and they just always do that. They're so efficient, so clinical. Yeah, it's that clinicalness. It's that desire. You could see with both her goals, she just was going to get to the ball first. She knows that the wingers done their job in putting the ball in. Now it's my job to get on the end of it. And she just bullied the right back. I think it's Perisset, wasn't it, for the first goal? Got in front, couldn't handle her. It's her strength and her power. And then I can't speak highly enough of that second goal because I was right behind that goal, and she had a 2 or 3 yards. She won the penalty spot when she pulled back out. Her movement pulled away from the defenders, and literally, I think it was Bock was watching, and Renard were just watching Hook with the ball and didn't know where she was, and it was put on their head. But she made the space up and the movement to just the desire to get in front and get her head on it was. I was just like, I was speechless at the time. I was like, wow, what a header. And that is what she has. And that's why I think it's a massive game for our two centre halves, because she's that threat. Yes, everyone has to play well, but to handle someone like that, I played against Bridget Prince for most of my career, and she was exactly the same. That power, that ability to know where to be, the movement. And Popp, they just breed them. She's just taken the baton on and has that desire too, because she's missed so many Euros, hasn't she? And that can be a massive thing inside a player to drive them on. And so, our two centre halves, Millie and Leah, have to win the battle basically, and it's the biggest game of their lives. Trust me, that's coming up. Well, I don't think the current team will be worried about the record as much. I do believe that they see themselves as equals with the Germans, whereas we certainly didn't in our time, because it was like I said earlier, golf. But I think they'll have those. Some of the players will have the memory of playing them at Wembley in friendlies. They were only friendlies, but and also in the Arnold Clark Cup where they did beat them, but it was a very different German team. They had quite a few injuries and people out, so. I don't, and the way that they've played, and the English team have played so far, and kind of with Sweden, we've never beaten. They didn't seem to have that tag on their head then, because they didn't worry about that. So I think with Sarina, that she's managed to get them to not worry about things like that and believe in themselves. So I don't worry as much as I would have certainly a few years ago or in the past. Well, we've kind of said it already with Popp and our centre halves, and then both teams really. Germany like to build up. They play out. They control the ball, but they can also hit you on the counter too. So they can change their styles very well. Good at set pieces. They have an all-round game as well, really, don't they? But I do think in forward areas we can really threaten them as well, and I said their back line looked quite quick, but I think if we can, it's those transition times. I think in midfield, if we can win that battle, get transitions and quickly release our players away, our forward players, then that could be where we can hurt them. So, and obviously limit set pieces against us and try and get as many as we can going forward. But yeah, midfield battle, who's going to win those? Get Kira Walsh on the ball. Everyone just has to have a big game. We know it's that's the level it gets to now.
Sorry, I know it's a hard question.
It's so hard, and just because it's Germany, you just think these are even though everyone was writing them off at the start, they're just someone that I would never write off. But equally, we are in the best place we will ever be to be able to do it and beat them. And for that reason, I've got to go all in and give them my support and say yes. I think we've shown we can come back. We can handle hard teams, tough teams, and everything that's been thrown at them. And this will be a completely new test, a different test again. But yeah, I've got to believe in them. I think we've got Sarina on side. We've got the home crowd. But equally, Germany will love that environment. I'm sure they will. They will rise to it too. But it's going to be one hell of a game. It's so hard to call. But yeah, I just keep thinking, please make this time be the time we get one over on Germany, because I can't tell you how much it would mean to me. So having been at the hands of them being dominant throughout my whole career, I think it is prepare, do your routines exactly the same way, believe in yourselves, and have no regrets. That is the biggest thing. Perform how you've got to pull it out of yourself to perform your best individually. You do that, and then collectively the team will perform, so and then be able to handle quickly in the moment of games, the momentum shifts of what happens, react from it not sensibly but quickly, and in a controlled way, really manage the game. That we always say about it, you've got to manage the game, because at the end of the day you can prepare as much, but what happens in the game, you've got to be able to react and make the right decisions quickly. So yeah, just no regrets, really. Leave it all out there. Yeah, well, that's why I worked so hard during my career. The former players were pushing, to try and get the exposure, etc. So I mean, it's just been more than I could imagine, really. It's record crowds. Obviously, I think we always knew that the England games would be that, but there was always that, what about the other games? Because I've played in tournaments where the host nation, it's full, and then there's a couple of thousand and I know it's slightly different times, decade on, etc. But the fact that it's been the 22s or 20,000, 16, I think, a lot of the other games, and the whole atmosphere around the stadiums, and from the viewpoint of watching them on telly, they just seem brilliant. It seems such a, it shows that it's the major tournament's finally arrived, and I think proud to be that we're in England and that we've put on this show as well. So yeah, it's been high quality, record breaking, and a real kind of good feel and atmosphere, I think, because it's such a family-based party kind of atmosphere. Yeah, I mean, I think we always knew that was the goal from former player, knowing they've got to semi-finals, knowing the players were disappointed with the semi-final in the World Cup against America and how they much believed they could have won it. Then to translate that into this tournament and go again and have that, deal with the expectation. I think in that first game we all didn't know how the players would deal with it because of 68,000 and a lot of them haven't played it that size at home before. And it was a bit nervy, but I remember the first game always being nervy because you've had such a long build up for it. You've had 2 or 3 weeks of constantly hearing about Austria or whoever we were playing at the time and their plan. And, so to get that one out of the way, and then they've just grown, haven't they, since? And the Norway result, I mean, wow, we didn't see that one coming. We didn't see the Sweden one coming, so they're so convincing. And it's the depth, I think that's the difference nowadays. And the fact that those young players, the likes of Leah, Williamson as well. Yes, it's her first captaining at the senior level, but she's captained at every level through the youth. So it's not completely alien to her. I mean, I remember in 2005 at my first Euros home, first major tournament, it was sink or swim kind of thing, whereas no experience of doing it before. But I think Leah has that, and the younger players coming through know the system, know what the expectation is, know what tournament football feels like, even though obviously a step up being international senior football. But they've performed brilliantly and had questions answered and asked about them in the Spanish game. dealt with a very experienced Swedish team, almost pushed them aside. And I could see this tie being set up, England Germany final at Wembley. And in my time, when we played in 2009, it was a completely different gulf between the two teams that matched up in that final. Here it's different. The mindset of these current players is that they won't fear the Germans like we did, because yes, we know the history, but it's not history of recent times, because the Germans haven't got to latter stages of tournaments as England have. In the last Euros, I think they were quarterfinals knocked out, weren't they? So and England got to the semis. So I think it's a different mindset of the team, and the fact that Sarina being in charge has given them that extra little bit of belief I think we were missing in the last tournaments, because she's been there and done it, and that can be key to know that your manager has actually made a team like the Dutch, who were on par with England, I think, when I played in recent years, and she's elevated them above England and went and won something, and then got to a final and backed it up after the World Cup. So she's the key, really. I think it's that belief. I've always said it's the belief of our national team that is lacking in the women's game, because we have the talent, and now we even have the better depth than we have had before. Well, I think we'll just go from back to front, really. I think the first at the back line would have been Millie Bright in the first few games. I actually think against Sweden, she had a bit of more of a trickier game. But the others, she was getting ahead on everything. She was being so dominant at the back. Then looking forward, it's hard just to pick out a few, isn't it? But like Kira Walsh is so integral, and her passing stats is, to see that and know that she's beaten some of the Spanish players, is it 90% or 91% or something? And you just think, we knew she was good. And for me, she's even improved on it's off the ball, when players would just get past her or get away from her, because she's not as quick and agile, but she's improved in that as well, and being able to defensively spot things and cover. She's just been pinging the ball around, really, isn't she, and setting up the plays almost for us and driving through her. I think when Sweden were trying to keep her out of it, Asllani was literally on her toes all day. It shows that the other teams respect her and need to know that they need to stop her. And then, forward, it's probably Beth, isn't it, because of the goal scoring, to have that. Obviously, she's up there with Alexandra Popp now, because she scored 2 last night, but and Alexandra Popp is the centre forward. She should be getting, whereas Beth is the wide player, but yet comes in as a centre forward often and can get the goals because of her natural striker's instinct. So, I think those, and then you can't leave out Russo, because she's made such an impact, hasn't she? It's hard to just pick a few, but I think Russo's going to have a bright future. She reminds me actually of Ellen White when she burst onto the scene in 2010, just how she took it in her stride then, scored goals from angles you don't expect them to score, and Russo's kind of is doing the same. And I'm sure she'll go on to have a bright future. I think I've loved watching her again in the WSL for United. And when she got injured, it was a big blow for them. And then come back this season and just made an instant impact. So she's certainly one for the future. I like Georgia Stanway. Is pretty special too, from an England point of view. There's others, and Pop's header last night, I'm like, geez, but not quite as good as a little cheeky back heel. We know, we all like those. Well, I have so much credit for Beth, because watching her at Arsenal, she came to Arsenal as an out-and-out striker, number 9. And in a way had to learn the wide position because of Miedema. When you got Miedema in the team, she's going to be your 9, isn't she? And be that leading striker. But she's had to really learn how to become a wide forward as well, and done it well. And then at one point, I think last tournament for England, she was played on the left and had to learn that and be confident with that, even though she's right-footed, and she did that well. So she's kind of dealt with everything that's been thrown at her during her career, and still prospered, and still, got to this level of performing highly. Obviously, a disappointment. We all know that she said about not being picked for the Olympics, which has almost driven her. And sometimes, the disappointments are the things that make you who you are. And she's reacted in the best way in this tournament. But it's that. She's a wide forward, but I played with wide forwards who were wingers basically, and didn't really get in and score, and thought their job was just to cross it. But she, she can do that role, but she wants to get in the box and score too. And she almost becomes that second striker when Lauren Hemp has got the ball, isn't it? And Lauren's very good at that too, to be fair. They do it so well, and I think that's what helps. I mean, if I was a little bit critical of Beth, I think sometimes in the last couple of games I've wanted her to take her defender on a bit more. I think she needs a bit more belief in knocking it past and going, or little dribbles and taking her on, especially when, like we saw in Spain, when they're so up close to her. Get that extra yard, knock it round, do something creative and then spin and go and get, that could be the little thing that could, if your defender's going to do that, because I thought the Spanish did that very well on both Hemp and Mead, then that's what, that part of her game she could maybe just work out a little bit more as well. But yeah, she's been phenomenal, hasn't she? Well, I think it was probably the Spain one, because it was the test. They were the favourites, they controlled the ball. We had to work out how we could get the ball and use it better. And yeah, went that goal behind that real test. And then, yeah, Georgia Stanway's goal, obviously. I mean, I do think to score that and then just hear the roar of the crowd. And I think that just showed the resilience and the togetherness and the question with doubts and and they mentally could deal with that too. So yeah, even though obviously in Sweden, when you look at 4-0, you think, and they had to ride out in that game really too, didn't they? In the first half, they were a bit fortunate. I think Blackstenius' header come off the bar, a couple of early opportunities that Mary had saved, but I would go because it's a different mindset when you're a goal down and the momentum of the game and how it can shift and all that, but to stick at it, that tactical awareness of Sarina to put Millie up front, cause a bit of chaos, and that was the signal almost to the team to say, right, you go for it, foot to the floor, you got nothing to lose, and to react and be able to actually produce that moment where that cross come in, Lauren Hemp back on her left foot, crosses, Russo knocks it down. I think that's the real special moment that really tested the team and where they responded. So it was a bit of all of it, really, the tactical awareness to do that. We saw it before, actually, in the Arnold Clark Cup. They did it, I think, in the game against Germany. So I think it was the German game. And they ended up winning it 3-1. So it just, all of that tied in together. And during that game, I think, is the major thing for me. Yeah, it's very different, like the kind of support and how the game's professional now. But I think the difference for me, I knew we would always gradually improve and get closer to the top nations, and shown that in the 2015 World Cup, the Euros 2017, getting to semi-finals. But I've always felt that the last bit of the puzzle was the manager who's won something, because when you're in the changing room and you're going through all the tactics, all the little things that go on behind the scenes, which can't really go into now, and it's the belief of the players that knowing that coach, what they're telling them is won something. I just think that's invaluable, and that's been proven now. After Hope obviously wasn't in the role, I felt that this England team, we deserve to have someone that's been there and done it, and obviously they went in different ways with the two next managers, but and they both had an impact in their way. But yeah, I thought it's that they need to look at that person and say, in the women's game, they've been there and done it and won something with their national team. So I think that's the kind of little bit of the key of missing out of the squads that have happened since. Well, now she's got England to another final, even no matter what the result, obviously, even more so if England win it. But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of some of the names of the Ellis, that is American, Pia Sundhage, who's been there and done it and done well. Those type of female managers. It doesn't have to be female either, but but those are the ones that quickly come to my mind. But and even the American, I can't remember his name. I can picture his face before, who took the 1999, was it the World Cup? They won it, the Americans. They're the kind of caliber of coaches I've always, they've been there, they've done it, they've put the best teams have gone on to win the tournament. So I mean, she's filled it. For me, it was you talk about 103 goals, but a lot of those are in games where 20-0 against Latvia or whatever it was. And I'm like, you as a player and squad and manager get tested in the major tournaments, like all those stats sometimes when I think, we're about 80 of them against low opposition and they don't really count. But it's this tournament that I think fair play, hats off, because her and her assistant, who come over as well, they were obviously a real good team. And I think I just read an article that Lucy said it's a lot of him as well, his tactical genius. And obviously Sarina brought him in for a reason, because they have a good working relationship. But yeah, I mean, you just got to think, you've won it with a team, like I said earlier, that the Dutch were below England, in my opinion, on ability. But she's took them to win it at home Euros, then followed it up with that World Cup final, narrowly missing out, and then to come to another country and have that impact again with a very good group of players. But you've still got to get that relationship. And I did say at the start of the tournament, I think it's hard for her because it's less than a year almost that she's had this time to make something happen. But from the players' point of view, it's that sweet spot of those first few where everyone's playing hard, wanting to show what they're capable of. And I've been where I've been with managers for a long time, and then you start to see, not favoritism, but certain habits and stuff, and players can lose a little bit of touch with that. So I think that sweet spot of being so new as well, and that she's created this success straight away, she'll have that for a much longer period with those players, I think. But yeah, she's going to be up there if we win it for sure. I'll have her on a pedestal all the time if that happens. I mean, I think she will trust it, because I'm like, well, who would you change at this time? You wouldn't change the back line, I don't think, now that Daly's done well in responding in that Sweden game. Midfield, Ella Toom maybe for Fran, but fortunately, Fran, I think had her best game. I was actually quite critical personally. I haven't said it openly to many. That Fran was quite in the first few games always a bit safe. I think she was easing herself in. She was just making sure she kept the ball, and I think in the Sweden game we saw a bit more of her putting those forward balls, trying to make things happen and be a bit more creative and really drive the team on. And then obviously the goal was the icing on the cake, but before that her performance was much better and she stood up and took the game. But yeah, and then obviously maybe Ellen White, because of Russo's come on and done well. But then you argue, will Russo be able to handle starting a final? It's that pressure of handling. We know Ellen will. I think Ellen will. Also, she's at that good in the air. She can help out for set pieces defensively. I think we'll need that with Popp. I think Millie Bright will probably pick her up, Popp. But I think that extra bit more height, she can get back and defend for set pieces, could help in the first half. Russo's good with her head, but probably won't have that experience that Ellen would bring for that type of role. So I think it's kind of almost a formula that's worked. Why would you change it? Because the Germans will just, even if you just put a surprise on them, they'll be able to handle it. So I almost feel like go with what you've done, what the team had tried and tested in, and believe in our own performance and abilities. And those players coming on are so strong that they can do well. Unless there's niggles or injuries which we don't know about, which might have to, force her hand, but I don't think she will change it. Well, there'll be nerves, of course there will, but I think they'll trust the process and how they've approached every game. And yes, it's a bigger size crowd. It's almost, I think they've got to savour it, but then put that to bed and just treat it like every game, and almost not realise they're at Wembley in a way, because the pitch will probably feel a lot bigger and the whole environment. But then they've had the support of the crowd and they've had that Old Trafford experience before, and I just think they're in a mindset where they will relish it rather than be squashed by that environment. So I think they'll embrace it. They have to. You've got to look at it like that, and try not to think about the fact that Germany have beaten us at Wembley a couple of times. And for some of the players, they might not have been in the squad at that time either. But it's an occasion, of course it is, but you've just got to try and be professional. And it's so hard to balance that, savouring it, taking it all in, but equally just doing the job at hand. And it's a game of football, you know, and it's got a big prize at the end of it.
Definitely.
It's all, sometimes it's the nerve. I remember the nerves 3 or 4 days before the final, building up, and it's controlling that and finding ways to not allow that to zap your energy, I suppose, even, or waste your energy in those ways. So it's ways in and around the hotel and just relaxing, taking your mind off it, you know. So but equally the team and the players now are full-time professionals, so they're doing this week in, week out more regularly. So I just think they're better prepared nowadays. Well, to be honest, is not saying something that us former people that have been in the game for a long time have been saying after every tournament since, more so it's probably since 2015, that World Cup, because that's when we started to see a much more bigger media presence. And then obviously the ones that have come on, because it's always this, oh, the major tournament, everyone gets on board, everyone loves it, we do all these interviews, and then it kind of shies away. No, we don't see changes at the WSL about getting them. I think it has to be that we get more games at bigger stadiums, because that's shown that that's what people want to come, and that's where they think the game should be played too, not going back to Arsenal or Boreham Wood or something in the WSL. So it's that bridge now. How do we go about that? How about making that, yes, there are more games at the big men's stadiums, or is it that when do we take the leap of women's teams playing in their own bigger stadiums, or, you know, like Chelsea have done, actually getting ownership of their stadium, which makes it a lot easier around matches and handling it, having worked behind the scenes at Arsenal for a long time. But then also, so it's not only at that level, so people could still get bums on seats and get people to come and watch the England games, you know, fill the stadiums at the next England Cup, even though it's a qualifier. That's the level we need to get to. But equally, like Right was saying, it's about young girls playing, having that opportunity. But for the last few years, it's a clear plan for the FA to make sure that more girls at primary school get opportunities to play football, and that it becomes more of a natural thing. So he's kind of saying what is being put in the pipeline, but we've been saying for a long time, but because it's his profile, it seems to stick a bit more, which is great. And he's been championing the women's game. And I did a game with him just before the tournament, the Dutch game with Friendly, and he generally is in it because he just sees it as football and wants to do well. So you're never going to mind someone championing it like he is, and using his platform so positively for the women's game. So yeah, but it is about those next future players, those young girls and boys, seeing that there's role models, seeing that girls play it in the playground next to them or with them, and there is no kind of differentiation, I suppose. Because my 9-year-old a couple of years ago, he actually come home from school one day. Bear in mind, he's lived in a household where his mum's quite active, loves football, he knows, plays football. He come home and was like, oh yeah, but mum, boys are better than girls, aren't they, at football? And, you know, and I was like, where's he? You know, he learns that in the playground, and because he doesn't see many girls playing, or there's the odd one playing with him at break time. And it's that which will shift that, you know, mindset. Obviously he knows that, you know, but it's just those messages that they must talk about, or they learn from older brothers and sisters, or parents at home, or whatever. So yeah, it's about just the equal opportunity and young girls to get the ball when they go home and play in the garden. And, you know, it's not that instinct at the moment, whereas for boys it is more so. Yeah, I mean, it has been every tournament, it does, and it is, but it's just, I think it's until we stop having these conversations around the women's game, because we never watch a men's game and go, oh, but they're going to inspire. Well, we do say they're inspiring the next generation, but there's never that kind of, oh, but we still need to grow it, you know. So yeah, it's hard, isn't it? It's the language. Like even myself, I find myself checking. I've got to stop saying, well, in my time we didn't play, because now they do, and that is becoming the norm. So yeah, I think it will grow. It will keep growing, but it's we've seen the explosion recently and now, but it needs to be that same consistent through the season, and then on to next summer when we have our World Cup as well. So that's probably a good thing that it's so close. It's not another 2 years away. It's next summer. And then we got the men's obviously at Christmas or just before. So yeah, I think it's those conversations as well, and that constant messaging that we put around when women's football play, you know, which will help it. Yeah, well, it's been growing again each year, getting stronger with the foreign players coming in, but obviously equally mindful that we don't want the younger English players to get kind of pushed out. They still need those opportunities, and the clubs need to be brave at doing that, because that's pretty much my concern as well going forward. But equally, this tournament, I think, will encourage even more to come over, because they'll have experienced what they've played in this country, in these stadiums, and the investment which is gradually going into the WSL and back in. But yeah, so that and then crowds, I do think, will grow, especially if we go on and win it on Sunday, even more so. But yeah, well, what teams? I'm trying to think, because I've been so focused on Euros, it's trying to keep across all the kind of different signings and stuff. But yeah, I mean, Chelsea are gonna look strong, aren't they? They've got such a depth anyway. City have made some good signings, but have kind of lost a few, so you're kind of not knowing how they're going until you start seeing them play, how they will fare. And I just wonder what's going on in the background for so many to kind of want to move on when they did have a good end to the season. And then obviously I'm never going to count Arsenal out, am I? So, but United, I think, have made a couple of good signings too. But yeah, it's just the other teams as well. I think they'll pick up some good foreign players, because some of the, like Tottenham and Reading, they need a bit more experience and strength in their team, I think, from better players. So whether they'll pick some up, and it will just, I think, generally the league will strengthen even more.